Books. Books are great, and through this year, I've rediscovered the greatness that books hold within them, the greatness that stories have, and the enjoyment that comes with reading these stories. Now, just as there is as many stories as there are that are written and published, there are also many different presentations. And today I kind of want to nerd out and talk to you about what I think is like a perfect presentation for a book, something that I love and will continue to collect. So when I got into reading, my big thing was I wanted to read a lot of like foundational works. There's probably a lot of really great stuff that's being written like today, but it just fascinates me that there are books that have withstood the test of time and have in some cases never gone out of print before. And so I'm also a fan of beginnings, so where things come from essentially. Like my favorite book in Lord of the Rings is The Hobbit. My favorite book in Narnia is The Magician's Nephew, just to kind of give you an idea, because I love like the start of things. And so I'm buying all these classic books. And now what's really great about reading too is that you can reread books infinitely. You could read one book for the rest of your life, and just as soon as you finish it, reopen it, and you will probably get something new from it. And so when I got into books this year, I was thinking, I really would like something that I can collect and that is great quality, really nice to hold, is durable, and something that as I am reading, it is a pleasure to look at and a pleasure to hold. I'm a sensory person when it comes to my touching, so having a book that feels great is great, but having a book that looks good too, I feel like just helps kind of draw you into the story even more. And I think that these kind of books have it down to a T. So I'm going to show off my collection of them, and I'm talking about the Everyman's Library edition of books. Now you can see here I have Moby Dick currently with no jacket on it, and that's for two reasons. One, I'm reading it, and the second reason, I don't have it. The other thing about these is that you can find them used for extremely cheap. I got this edition right here in almost perfect condition. Granted, it's a little older, so it might not be how they would publish them or produce them now, but I still am getting the story in this really nice hardcover edition, and that's what's important to me. So I'm going to use this as kind of a basis to show you just a way that Everyman tends to lay out their books, at least these classical books. And they have more contemporary literature too, like modern classics that they publish as well, and I own a few of those. But when you get something that is as old as Moby Dick, Victorian era, 1800s, it's really cool the features they throw in here. So we're going to crack it open. I guess I should talk about the outside. It's cloth bound, and it's just so velvety. All their hardcovers are just so pleasing to touch. And the cover colors vary depending on the year, or I guess the century that the books are published in. So you'll notice a lot of my books are this Victorian era, or 19th century, I believe. I'm just having a moment with that literature, I guess. That's just all these great stories. That's like the time period that's calling to me. And then on the end, you typically have this little block here that has the author, and then this little sun, which is a logo, and then the title of the work or works, because they do collected books as well. And then on the back, there's nothing, obviously. And another thing too, you see this little guy hanging out here. All their books have ribbon bookmarkers, which I love. I think it just helps tie into the kind of classiness and the classic look of this book. Like, this is something I feel like you would see on your granddad's bookshelf. Okay, I've spent 4 minutes and I haven't even started showing you any of the collection. I originally wanted to post this to Instagram as a reel, but they limit reels to 15 minutes, and I could not make a video under 20. So that is why we are here on my YouTube channel. So you open it up, you have more of this Everyman's logo, and you'll notice the pages are this really nice off-white color. Just beautiful. The pages are acid free as well. I don't know too much of what that means. I'm pretty sure that means they don't yellow as quickly over time. But also, I just guess acid kind of is a scary word, so if it's acid free, it's good. And since this is an older publication, I'm sure newer ones, I know newer ones are a little different than this in the way they lay them out, but I love this. This just looks and feels so classic to me. And over here you have their little saying, which I probably should have looked up the work that's from. I have before, I just forgot. And so yeah, the presentation is just beautiful. And so you have your author introductions as well, or introductions by other authors. I don't believe, or this one probably was. I don't know who it's by. And then another cool thing is that they have, oh, okay, there it is. Larzer Ziff. Cool name. They have the selected bibliography, which is cool. If you have these are like other works that you can go and visit after you read the text or while you're reading the text. And then the next cool thing they have is the chronology. And this is really cool for these older writers. They include this, and it tells you the author's life in the literary context and the historical events. So you can kind of see what was going on in the author's life and what they were writing or what they were doing. And then you can also see like what books were coming out or what authors died, as well as different historical things, which is really interesting to peek through and look through. Just from time to time. I haven't read it. I haven't read it from I guess front to back on here, but it is neat to kind of just see like these events and these things that happened in the time in which it was written. And then you get to the actual book. So here it is, Looming's famous first sentence here, "Call me Ishmael." As you can see, this book is laid out surprisingly well. Sorry if you just heard that. My dog just got up off the couch. The text in here, like the actual font, is a little small, which is fine. It's not always like that, but Moby Dick is a long work, and I mean, this book is still I think over just under 600 pages. So they would probably shrink the text a little bit, so that way the paperweight is still nice and thick in some sense, and also so they could fit the whole story in here and not have it be a massive book. So you have plenty of margins on the top and bottom here, not so much on the side, at least in this copy. But yeah, it is just laid out so good, and even the fonts they choose for their stories, they don't carry the same font throughout every single book that they publish, but the fonts they do choose, I think, really represent kind of the mood of the story. This feels old and typewritery, if you will. This feels like an old type. And another thing that is really cool is that typically in the backs, I don't know about this one. Okay, so this one, it doesn't say it, but typically it actually tells you a little history about the font that they chose. And they typically are correlated with in the time in the book was written. So yeah, the only problem I have with this specific copy of Moby Dick is it doesn't have the extracts. Now, I'll show you real quick. Here's my Pan Macmillan pocket edition of it, which is also really beautiful. It has the extracts, which is, I know they cut them sometimes from publications of Moby Dick, but I feel like these are really interesting to go through, and they kind of help set the stage of Moby Dick, the actual whale. And so I think these are important, if not maybe crucial, to the story. And it is sad that they aren't in there. Again, this is an older one. I believe this particular one is from 96 or something. So I could also be wrong about that. So, but they probably changed it in newer editions. So, okay, now I've spent, holy moly, I've spent 10 minutes talking about these. And I haven't even shown you my collection yet. So, all right, there's Moby Dick. I guess it doesn't matter. I don't have a time limit, I guess. So I can go as long as I want here. So I'll show you the first one I actually did buy, and that is Cormac McCarthy's The Border Trilogy, which has All the Pretty Horses, The Crossing, and Cities of the Plains. Phenomenal trilogy. The Crossing is actually my favorite Cormac McCarthy book, and I've read almost everything. I'm currently finishing Suttree right now, and then I have Child of God and The Orchard Keeper. Oh, and then The Passenger and Stella Maris. But as of now, The Crossing is definitely my favorite read. And we'll take a look in here too. And you can see they kind of change the way they present the, this is more common as we'll go through. They change the way that they lay out this title page here. And then this is 3 books in one. So you have all the pretty horses, like I mentioned, and then you have, let me get to it, the crossing, and then you have Cities of the Plain in there. And you can see the text in here is also different as well. I'm not sure it's the same font, but it's a little bigger too, which is really nice. And so, yeah, this is just great reading material. Yeah, we'll see. I'll show you on here. So it tells you a little history, and then this volume is set in typeface Jansen and printed on acid-free cream rope paper with a full sewn cloth binding. Which is also very important for books, and the longevity of books is like sewn bindings and whatnot. And you'll notice the color, I'll show you real quick. That's because this is contemporary, so this is, or a contemporary classic, if you will. Not if you will, that is what they call them. So they have this slightly brighter red coloring to them. So we will maybe put that back on. Alrighty. All right, then the next one we have is Albert Camus, The Plague, The Fall, Exile in the Kingdom, and Selected Essays. Albert Camus really interests me personally, and probably a lot of other people, but just some of his ideas are really neat. He's pretty famous for the quote of, like, one must imagine Sisyphus happy, which is cool. And so I was intrigued, and I found this in a used bookstore. And reading some Dostoevsky, people on the subreddit pointed out, like, oh, you should check out some Camus, which I had already sort of planned to, but that was just kind of the thing. And so finding this in the used bookstore was really cool. I was reading a little bit of the Myth of Sisyphus a little while ago. Pretty interesting stuff, kind of dense philosophy, but really good so far from what I have read. And preface, I have not read a lot of these books. I actually am not buying books for the rest of the year because I have bought all these. And again, I've bought most of them, if not all of them used, except for the Dostoevsky books. So then next up we have Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I bought this for more so my wife, but I also intend to read it. Jane Austen, like, impresses me so much because she was like 20 something. She was really young when she started publishing her works, and she wrote ferociously too, from what it says here on her chronology of her life. She wrote pretty ferociously, and here, hold on, we can maybe see exactly when she started. Yeah, so she was fairly young when she first started writing, and so that does impress me. But I do want to read her books. My sister used to love the Pride and Prejudice movies, or movie, I don't know. So I've seen that, but I don't remember anything. All right, then next up we have George Eliot's Silas Marner. Little short story. I found this again at a used bookstore. I also wish Everyman's would print this on more of their covers, because I think this is so pretty looking, and if you buy a book used, you get this nice detail if you don't get the dust cover. So I've not read this one yet. I have no idea what it's about, but I do know that George Eliot wrote Middlemarch, which is a work I am somewhat interested in reading, not anytime soon, but eventually I would like to get to it. So I thought, a little short story to kind of get the feel of the author would be cool. And it was like $8. So, all right, next up we have arguably the most important book ever written, at least the first half of it. We have the Old Testament, and this copy actually came from a library, so you can see like the stickers, and you can see on the top, I tried to sand away the marker marks, I think, of blotting out the library's like stamp that they put on there. Did not go super well, but I also got kind of impatient, so I just left it. And this is cool too. I'll show you the color of this one. It's this beautiful like tan color. I'm pretty sure all their like religious text come in that color as well. And one thing I really love about this Bible is that it is not set up like any other Bible I've seen. Every Bible I've ever read has like text column here, and it kind of gets overwhelming to look at. But this makes it so much easier to just dive in and take it page by page, and just reading these great stories, and in such a great translation of the Bible. There's a lot of people who say that the King James Version is like the only good translation of the Bible, which I'm not too sure, but extremely poetic, the cornerstone of Western literature, and it's just beautiful to read. And if you know anything about me, you already know that my bookmark and where I am reading currently is already in Exodus. Probably my favorite story in the Bible. By probably, I mean it is. So we have the Old Testament here. Really, really nice. And then we have my most unfortunate purchase, which is Don Quixote. You might be like, Brent, why is this unfortunate? Well, because this is the Mateau translation, which from what I've read is almost unreadable. It is a very poor translation of the text. I can't be too upset. I paid like $5 for this, and I didn't even think, because typically Everyman is pretty good at choosing like decent translations. You'd think they would choose like the Rutherford or the Grossman translation, which is actually, I had to go out and buy that for when I read this eventually, which will probably be within the year, more than likely. So yeah, I picked this up, and it stinks too. Like, I love that. Like, it just fits the theme of the book. If you know, Don Quixote is widely regarded as the first modern novel, and it was penned in the 1600s. I think 1605 is when it was first published. I am so excited to read this story because I feel like this is also potentially a cornerstone for Western literature as we know it today, almost as much as the Old Testament, or not the Old Testament, the King James Bible is. So, really unfortunate. Probably never read this version, but it looks really pretty on the shelf. I mean, you got this fat book. It's just great. It's real beautiful. All right, so the rest of my books now are Russian literature. I read Dostoevsky this year, and I started with Crime and Punishment, and it blew me away. And there's also something like so interesting about Russia. A little side tangent here. I found out about like the Soviet Union, like for real, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, to be honest. Like, I found out just what happened and like how many people died, and I was like, holy moly, how did I not learn about this in school? And I touched on it a little bit. I read Animal Farm when I was in middle school, which I don't remember. It's been so long. I don't remember if it's exactly critiquing Russia or if it's just critiquing communism as a system. But that was like the extent of it. And so reading Dostoevsky has just made me so interested in reading more authors, and like Chekhov, Pushkin, Tolstoy, all these other great, phenomenal writers that come out of Russia. So I have quite a stack here, and we'll get right into them. So we have Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I know almost next to nothing about this story. I just know that it's pretty disturbing from what I've heard, and I kind of want to keep it that way. This might be a read for Halloween if it's disturbing, or around Halloween, like the fall time, which we're getting to real closely here. But yeah, I am excited to read this and check it out, and see what that's all about. That's all I gotta say about it. And then we have the collected stories by Alexander Pushkin. I've heard Pushkin described as like the Russian Shakespeare, if you will. And I should preface that, not the Russian Shakespeare, but how Americans typically read Shakespeare in school, Russians read Pushkin in school. That's what I'm trying to say. Not that he is like Shakespeare. So I think that's really cool, and like I mentioned earlier, I like getting to like the root of things. So if I'm going to start reading Russian literature, I kind of want to see like what helped paved later Russian literature. And so here's his short stories. I've not dipped my toes into this one yet. I will eventually when I'm in the mood. I haven't read any short story books yet, unfortunately. But I mean, I just got into reading this year. I got back into reading this year, so it is on my to be read list. I will visit it soon. Little cut there. My dog wanted his dinner, so if you hear him chewing, I apologize, but also he is just well fed. So the next book we have is Notes from a Dead House by Dostoevsky. This is the only book this year that I did not finish, and I'm hesitant to return to it because it has been like a month since I put it down, so I don't remember a whole lot. I remember like bits and pieces, but I've read other books since then that have kind of taken over my brain, my little capacity brain. So, but I will revisit this potentially within the year. And so, sorry, I should say I didn't stop reading it because it was boring. I wasn't ready for it, but I put this down to read a different Dostoevsky novel. So another cool thing about this, they probably do this with other translated works as well. I actually don't know if it's in here yet. Yeah, okay, so this is based on the translations, but it is nice to have them in here. So all of Dostoevsky's books are in the P&V translations. The, what is it called? Pever and Volochinsky, I'm pretty sure is how you say that. And they have all these notes, which are really handy to have. I feel like most of the time I don't really need to reference them because I can kind of understand what's being said. But sometimes they mention historical things or they mention other things from other works, and you get hung up. And it's cool to have these notes back here that you can hop back to, and they're numbered and placed within the text as well. So it's really cool to be able to hop back here while you're reading and get kind of a better idea of what is being talked about. Notes of a Dead House. Then we have my favorite read of the year, Crime and Punishment. Gosh, I already want to reread it. Like so bad. And I could, is the thing, but I have so many other works that I want to get through too. I thought that little thing was a little speck. But yeah, Crime and Punishment. It's just, what a good book. It is just gripping the whole story, just as nonstop grip on your heart and your mind, and your feelings too. So again, really beautifully set up here. I guess I haven't really been showing you too much the text, but yeah, this kind of feels like it's in the same vein as what I said about Moby Dick. It feels like it fits. So I'll actually skip back here real quick and see. Okay, this one doesn't tell you the type they used either. Some of them do, and some of them don't, which is kind of odd. But yeah, just gosh, great book, really good book. And the reason reading this first might be the reason I had a hard time with the next Dostoevsky book that I've read and just recently finished, because this book is so fast-paced, and I guess it is kind of the only Dostoevsky book that is fast-paced from what I've read online. So, I mean, if you're planning to get into Dostoevsky, word of advice, if you read this, don't expect every single book of his to feel as fast-paced as this one. The next one I have is The Idiot. So, this book was kind of a struggle for me, and I think I went into it with the thought that like maybe this would be like as fast-paced as Crime and Punishment, and it's not. It's relatively slow, and it's something you have to appreciate Dostoevsky for. He's really good at building up the tension, and so I also did not go into this prepared, I think, and I lost track at some points, and I would say around like 400 or so pages in, I kind of just wanted it to be done. But as I finished it, something didn't sit right in my heart. So then I started thinking about it, and then I started researching about it. There's just another thing to be grateful for, that we live in such a time where these old texts have been deciphered, and there are plenty of talks and writings online that are freely available for you to help you engage more with these great books and this great conversation. My favorite character in this book is Ippolit. I think I loved him. I loved everything he had to say. Mishkin is awesome as well. I loved Mishkin. My only problem maybe with this story, not that a critique matters, this book is like almost 200 years old, is that Mishkin did not talk enough. I loved when he would go on his little rants and get his little fits, not the seizure fits, but you know, and when he would just go on and on and on about a topic, that was when it would really pull me back in. But I learned from this book what I need to do with other Dostoevsky books, and I will talk about that a little later. So yeah, The Idiot. Then next up we have Demons, which is, goodness, I am so drawn to this book. Everything I hear about it, it like pulls me in. However, I am intimidated by it because I've heard that it is very confusing. And it's confusing for a while before things start to really click together for you. And I just am like, I will eventually get over this intimidation and I'll dive in and maybe I'll just power through it, and if I don't understand a whole lot, then I will then go and research things. I don't like doing it typically beforehand because if I am able to, I would like to draw some of my own conclusions and then see how that goes against either what other people have said or what other people have said, and how I can add that to my understanding of the text. And so, yeah, I just am so excited. This is probably his darkest works that he has written, and it predates the Soviet Union by like 100 years or something, and from what I understand, it kind of like lays out the groundwork for what actually happens in Russia in one way or another. So I am incredibly excited to read this eventually. However, my newest read is The Brothers Karamazov. That was a little cringe, but I don't care. I originally wanted to read all of like Dostoevsky's really big works before I dove into this one because one, it's his magnum opus, and two, he wrote this at the end of his life. And a lot of authors, when they Dostoevsky died pretty young. He was only, I think, in his 60s. But I think everyone kind of gets an inkling for when their time has come, if you will. And so this kind of combines like every talking point from his older books in one way or another and kind of just puts them all in here. So I actually started reading this one, I think yesterday. Yeah, yesterday I started reading it. I picked it up. I was just craving it. I was craving Dostoevsky. Again, another example where this is a long book. So they cut down on the text, or the font, I should say, or not the font, yeah, the actual text, and make it small. And I mean, this book is still like 800 pages. Yeah, just under 800 pages there, 776. And I am so excited to dive in. And what I mentioned that I learned from The Idiot that I took into this book was, I have to go get it, having a little notebook. You can see, I don't really write or write anything in my books. And I don't want to, not in here at least. And I know that's like really good, but I just never really do in general. I don't think of it. But when you're reading this Russian literature, you can get lost with the names because they have different names and different like short versions of the names. And I actually can find it in here. It's like a name guide, if you will. So this will tell you like the characters and then all these little sub names for them. I don't remember exactly what these are called. It probably mentions it up in here. But it is good. Like this is at the front of the book, so you can reference it whenever, but I find it easier to take the names and write them down in here. And writing it with the hand, actually, I don't feel like it's like science. It kind of helps solidify things in your brain more, so you will just remember it when it comes up later. Or again, if you don't, you can reference back here. So you can write down their names and like some of those like nicknames, if you will. I don't know the proper name, I'm sorry. And then just like some characteristics about the character in question. And you just do it as they kind of come along too. I think this is why I didn't enjoy The Idiot, is because at times I was very lost in who was talking and what person was talking. And so just thought this would probably be a good idea for me. Alrighty, well, that's my collection. I'm sorry this video is so long. I am passionate about things and I geek out. And if you do want to start collecting these, again, check the used section. Check your local used bookstore if you have one, or one that's maybe a couple towns away, and see what they have, because they offer a lot of really good publications and authors and arrays of literature and things for you to read. And these are durable books that are beautiful and just so nice and so good to feel. So, okay, I love you. I hope you enjoyed this video.